So when it comes to wild horses, one of the biggest fears I find with adopters is learning to pick up their feet for the first time. You know, it can be pretty nerve-wracking when you've got a horse you can barely touch and maybe you've seen them strike out or kick out, and then you're supposed to pick their feet up for cleaning, maintenance, trim jobs, whatever. So today, I'm going to show you how we do that here in our tip program. So before I get into training today, I want to invite you to join us in an opportunity to help get more Mustangs out of holding and into loving adoptive homes. Even if you can't adopt, there are ways to help. Please click the link here on the video or click the description below, which has a link that will take you to our webpage that explains the opportunities available. A common question we receive is, how does the age of the horse affect how it tolerates learning to pick up its feet? Well, in our experience, age has absolutely nothing to do with it. We've had young horses and older horses up to about 11 years old that we've worked with here that either don't care at all or may be extremely defensive. So really it's about the individual horse. Now we're going to start the part one of this series with Sterling here. He is an almost 2-year-old gelding, and he so far on our initial evaluations doesn't show any concern whatsoever about his feet. He's not defensive at all. He's a lot more concerned with just what's going on around him. So we're going to show you a very quick and easy way that we teach them to pick up feet, where we just do some basic desensitizing and handling of their body and work our way down to lifting their legs. So he's going to be our part one demo. Next week, we'll have a part two where we show you a much more challenging horse, one that's very defensive. So stay tuned for that. Before I actually bring the horse in the pen, I like to make sure I have all my supplies ready. For this particular foot lesson, I like to have a good pair of leather-lined palm gloves. Now in my videos for this series, you're going to see I'm only wearing it on one hand because my other one is somewhat injured and I can't wear a glove unrelated to horses. But I do recommend those to prevent rope burn. Secondly, I have a training stick. Now the training stick is an excellent tool. You'll see it in a lot of my videos, but this becomes critical as an extension of my arm to allow me to really get a feel for the horse and how he'll react, especially on those hind legs. So excellent aid there. Next we have a rope halter, which is my preference, and the main lead rope you're going to hold to control the horse's head. Now, if you have a horse that's already well trained to halter pressure, a standard lead rope may work just fine. I like to use a roughly 20-foot yacht line lunge rope, which gives me a little more flexibility if the horse feels overwhelmed and wants to step away. I can work better with that. Finally, I have a yacht line lead rope that's about 14 feet long. Now, I don't use this for every horse, as you'll see today, but I have it available just in case I need it. A common question I get is, if you use a rope on a horse's feet, aren't you worried it's going to get tangled or trip himself or get into a wreck? The answer is, you have to be cautious. But over the years, I've used a variety of different techniques and I've used different kinds of ropes. This is the safest method I've found. The reason is, this particular rope is thin enough that it slides right through the weight of the bull snap. So in order to keep it on a horse's foot, I actually have to hold the end of the rope up so that the bull snap stays in place. As soon as I drop that rope, the bull snap tends to fall off the hoof and the horse steps right out. So within a step or two, if he gets away from me, he's out of the rope and there's no cause for concern. So this has definitely become my favorite technique. Next week in part two, when I work with that more defensive horse, you'll see how we put the rope to use to keep us safe. So let's get started. When I first start the session, I spend some time reviewing what the horse has already learned to that point. Sterling has had about 4 training sessions so far, so he knows some basics. I've also had one session where I worked on desensitizing and introducing him to stimulus. You can find a video in the description below called Desentizing a Horse that shows the details on how we do this. But because that video covers this information, I'm speeding through here just to save time. Here you can see that Sterling is pretty unconcerned about the stimuli flapping around his legs, so I progress to using my hands pretty quickly. I use a firm but gentle touch so I don't tickle him, and I just gradually work my way down. I always start on a front leg. I work my way down further with each stroke, out of his comfort zone and then back up into his comfort zone. Down a little further and back up. I keep repeating this process until I'm all the way down to his hoof. Now eventually I may cross into an area he's uncomfortable, like right there. You see how he took a step back. So I got a little too far too fast. Then something outside the pen startles him, so I just walk him back and we start the process again. Eventually, he'll let me get to the point I can put my hand down around his pastern and apply a little pressure. All I want at this stage is a relaxing of the foot. I want him to shift his weight a bit and maybe pick the foot up just a hint. As soon as he gives me an attempt to either shift his weight or lift his foot, I release all pressure, stand up, and go back to petting within his comfort zone. I'll spend the next few minutes repeating this process, adding pressure until he gives or makes an attempt, and then releasing the pressure. As time goes by, I'll ask him to lift his foot a little higher or maybe hold it a little longer. I'm going to speed the video up a bit here because I'm simply repeating this process of adding pressure and then releasing pressure when I get some attempt on his part. Each time I lift, I'll start asking for him to hold the foot longer or lift it a little higher, until he shows that he's getting comfortable and more relaxed with me working in that area. At that point, I'll ask him for 2 or 3 nice relaxed lifts of the foot, immediately set it down, call it good, and move on. Before moving on to the next foot, I like to allow the horse to do something to release any tension that may have built up and regain his focus and willingness to stand patiently. Here, I just circled Sterling a little bit, and then we're ready to move on with the session. I'm going to approach the second foot in exactly the same manner. Just because he tolerates me on one side does not mean he'll automatically tolerate me on the other. And in fact, a lot of times they'll get very fidgety on that second foot. Notice how if he starts moving around, I simply move alongside him. I don't release the pressure until he stands still and makes some attempt to give me that hoof. Repeating the same process with this second foot as I did with the first until he's just as comfortable with me lifting that foot as well. I'm going to continue speeding through these clips a bit since it's a lot of repetition. But as I move on to the hind foot now, first I'm going to spend a lot of time petting him all over. I want him comfortable with my body and my touches all around his flank, his rump, his upper thigh. If he dances around because he's a little uncomfortable with my presence there, I'm just going to move with him and maintain that pressure on him as I pet him, but not move lower on the leg until he's more comfortable with the level I'm at. I'm going to freeze frame this for a moment. I want to discuss the position I'm standing in for safety. Even if he hasn't shown much concern up to this point, that's still not a guarantee he won't startle or kick out. Notice how I have just enough pressure on the lead rope to encourage his head to be bent towards me. Now he's looking towards me a little more than typical, but that's his choice. I want to make sure I can pull their head and send their rear end away from me if there's an issue. Next, I'm standing with my back towards him and my knees slightly bent facing away from him. This way, if he kicks out sideways, he may knock me down or push me out, but he's not likely to cause any major damage. By standing close to him, I'm also reducing the force behind the kick, should he try that. Finally, notice how my shoulder and arm protects my face in the event of a kick. So I've just found this to be a very safe position overall and really reduces the chance of injury. When I finally reach the point I'm ready to ask the horse to give me his foot, I'm a little more cautious about how much pressure I use for that ask. I don't want to apply so much pressure that he reacts dramatically. I just want a slight give. Now, in this case, that was a perfect lift. Sometimes it may be a simple tilt of the hoof. I'll accept any attempt before I release pressure and reward by simply scratching within their comfort zone. Once again, I'll speed up the video as I'm going to repeat the exact same process as I did with the front legs. Each time I ask for a lift, I'm going to gradually increase how high I lift it or how long I hold it. I'll also ask him to relax and allow me to swing it around a little bit. This gets him increasingly comfortable with my presence. If he gets fidgety, I'll simply follow him around and try to keep the pressure on him until he relaxes and gives me a try. Then I'll release the pressure and move on. Before moving on to the fourth and final leg, I'll once again give him an opportunity to work off any tension that may have built up. Especially with these younger horses, sometimes they just get bored and fidgety. After I feel like he's gotten refocused, I'll move on and repeat the process for the fourth time. Before I conclude my session, I like to go around and review each foot until I get one nice, fairly easy lift. I want the horse to be calm with all 4 feet and give it to me fairly willingly. I find that this is a very critical step before I put them away. It helps them to really seal in their minds what I expect of them when I apply the pressure to their lower leg. If they lift that foot willingly on the first attempt, then I know they've got a pretty good understanding. If it takes me 2 or 3 tries, that usually means I'll have to do a lot more repeat work in the next session. A common question I get is how I hold the horse to ask for its leg by hand. So as you can see, when I'm going up and down, I'm always maintaining contact. And it's nice firm contact because I don't want to tickle the horse like a fly would. So I'm just rubbing my hand along, and just like a lot of trainers with domestic horses, I just rub my fingers right down either side of that tendon, around the fetlock, and ask for a lift. Now, in the event the horse has a chunk of hair there, that can actually be a little helpful. I can grab the hair, lift the foot, put it back down. If there's no hair, not a big deal. You just go around the bone, ask for the lift, and set it down. As the horse gets better at this, then your grip can get more secure. Thanks for watching today, guys. Sterling did a great job, and he's well on his way. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss part 2 next week, where we handle a much more challenging horse. That's going to be a lot of fun, and you're going to get to see some new techniques for staying safe. Other than that, we'll see you next time.